The final episode is such a great build for everywhere we've been in season 2 and promising what's to come.
Rhaenyra has choked King's Landing with the blockade, and people are starting to get hungry and they're going to revolt against the king or the Prince Regent.
Break the blockade and it will benefit you.
It seems you need us more than we need you.
There is a Lannister navy, there is a Hightower navy, but they're on the other side of the blockade. And so they end up going to bargain with the Triarchy, which Tyland is very not on board with, but ends up having to do. But it's a sign of how extreme their position is.
This is where the seat of power sits, and this is a very rich cartel of 3 different nations that are in the shipping and piracy business. And they hate Westeros, and they want to seek a profit off of them.
He gets sent to Pirate Land to treat with the pirates, to see if he can get the Triarchy to ally with the Greens.
Admiral Lohar.
He needs to impress me before he can get what he wants. I put him through absolute hell.
Singing was the worst. I can handle mud wrestling, but singing's miserable. But it worked because Tyland can't sing.
She's a bonkers character that feels like one of these very colorful characters ripped right out of the pages of George's books. The people there take her entirely seriously, and we're sort of looking at her the way that Tyland does, which is, what's going on, and is this real?
One of our season highlights was bringing in Shirako Lohar, and it can be a rough show. It's grim, it's a war, a lot of people die. So having that moment of levity and just sort of off-kilterness was really important to us and a really welcome little bit of fun.
A jest, my lord.
How goes the sea snake?
I've given her a new name. The Queen Who Never Was.
We really wanted to find a way for him to honor and keep alive the memory of Rhaenys, because it shows the arc that he's been on across the season where much of his life was about him and his own glory. I mean, he named his ship after himself.
Corlys always went out to sea, so Rhaenys never felt like his priority. And when she died, it finally came to Corlys that he always thought about himself. And so he did the one thing he could do, take his namesake, his ship, and make it hers.
He's lost all the people he loves. He's sort of come to this place of acceptance and understanding that his great exploits are less important than just having his family around him.
Do you know what hunger does to a boy? What grief does?
Rhaenys always had the conversation with Corlys about his heir, and none of them really feel like they're the right person. For the first time, Corlys considers Adam and Ellen. Yes, they are bastards, but they are more qualified.
One of the things that we talked about, myself, Abu, and Gita, was that nobody speaks to Corlys that way, not if they've got any sense. The only person who does is Rhaenys.
When it came to the tirade, this emotional speech, it came down to the words and playing off Steve and his reactions. Alan doesn't expect it coming out of him. I wasn't expecting it coming out of me either. Like, it was one of those moments where I genuinely felt like I could really let go.
I am trying to help you.
Now you remember I live.
He watched me with my other son picking up wonderful gifts and walking into the castle. And he, who knew I was his father, had to grow up in poverty. For me then to come into his life and sort of go, I'm trying to help you, well, of course he's going to be resentful.
You understand the hurt and everything that he's carried for all of these years. You see the way it lands on the sea snake. And I think he knows that he hasn't been the patriarchal figure that he needed to be to these guys, but I don't think he realizes until this moment the cost that it had on this human being.
If it is all the same, I will decline any offers of help.
Aemond lashes out. It's also a strategic act because Sharp Point is the seat of House Massey, who serves on Rhaenyra's council as a punishment to them for siding with the Pretender. Aemond is showing that he's not running, he's burning cities filled with innocent people instead.
Aemond is now, for the first time this season, I think, scared. From the time in season 1 when he got Vhagar as a boy, that's changed his entire outlook. And now that he's been challenged by these new dragons, it's the first time that, like, oh no, I don't have the upper hand in any situation I go into.
The stakes are so high that if he doesn't get another rider, he will have no chance against the Blacks. and they will lose the throne if Aegon continues to be king. In his mind, he's doing what's right for his house.
Why must I run? Because the Prince Regent is going to kill you. I think in Larys's experience, those who look through you, they never see you coming. That's what he's trying to say to Aegon is, as long as Aegon is not a threat, he's relatively safe.
Larys sees the light at the end of the tunnel, or at least he's made Aegon think he knows what that could be.
After his encounter with Aemond in episode 6, Aegon knows that Larys is correct.
In that moment, Aemond gets desperate with the newfound potential threat. He overextends and gets forceful with Helaena.
I think it's desperation that reeks off him in that scene where Alicent and Helaena are both like, bro, calm down. This is not how somebody who feels really sure about what they're doing behaves.
Helaena admits she saw how I burned Aegon. And it's hard hitting for Aemond to hear that he's going to go down. He kind of envisioned after the war had finished, he'd be seen as this war hero. But Helena's prophecy puts a stop to that.
Helena's probably put herself in more danger with Aemond than she ever has been before.
Would you not have us prevail?
Not like this. Aemond is going to be an interesting loose cannon in season 3 because when Aemond is scared, laughed at, or feels small, he lashes out.
You're either with him or you're against him. You get in his way, you're in for a show.
All your life, you've sought to command your own fate. But today you are ready.
There are different magics and worlds in play here in George's universe. And Alice has been a bit of a guide for Daemon and has made him ready for this thing that Alice is going to show him that he was not ready for in episode 3 when he showed up at the castle.
He's evolved in some way and he's ready to see the future.
We wanted Daemon to have this final experience that was undeniable to him. He's somebody that has rejected the supernatural his entire life.
We definitely wanted to tie what Daemon sees to Game of Thrones because where it picks up, it's Daenerys Targaryen finding those eggs. She is a descendant of Daemon and Rhaenyra, and so what he ends up seeing is that he's just this tiny piece of this massive story, and once you start to see that, you gain an entirely different perspective.
This vision brings Daemon into the story of Fire and Ice and takes him to his death. And after his death, it shows him that if he continues to only think of himself, great loss will be had. And then he sees a hope. We know it's Daenerys, but he doesn't know who it is.
I mean, he sees a White Walker, which is cool. I was like, come on, that's cool.
Even though Rhaenyra and Daemon are not going to save the realm from the White Walkers, their actions do have an impact on how that future is going to play out.
You know your part.
To evolve from the character that stormed out of Dragonstone in episode 2, we had to see Daemon go through all of his trials and tribulations, and Rhaenyra not knowing what Daemon is going to do. And you believe he is changed, and he sees that he is not the player, but a piece on the board, as Alice tells him.
He sees Rhaenyra on the throne, and I think it gives him the confidence in himself to go, I serve you, and I'm yours.
And it's not that everything's been resolved, but Daemon realizes that his job is to facilitate Rhaenyra getting to the throne, and that he understands now that Viserys wasn't trying to punish him, and so he's able to let go of his anger at Rhaenyra, just sort of let everything go, and let's go do this together. I'm on your team. She wasn't sure throughout the entire season if he was going to try to set himself up as king, and it's this moment of validation that she gets from him that I think is incredibly meaningful.
We fight for our queen!
Will you see it through and make your sacrifice? A son for a son.
You've seen the massive way that things have changed between meeting number 1 and meeting number 2. And I think both of them have been through further trauma, and it's brought them back around to a place where they're wondering what the cost of all this is for.
It's massive that Alicent travels to Rhaenyra. It's treason. If Aemond found out, head on a spike. But it's also to look Rhaenyra in the eye as my rawest self. This is me shedding whatever power or queenly status I had. I was wrong, take it. I don't want anything to do with it, I'm done. She's had this journey of self-actualization and she's got a lot of power within her, and I think she feels much more capable.
It's funny to be offered a huge gift at the point where you think you already have what you need.
The climax of that scene is Rhaenyra, I'm going to have to kill your son, and Alicent acceding to it, which is huge for Rhaenyra because that is not something that Alicent would ever have done before. So I think that causes her to really believe what Alicent is saying. Rhaenyra has these new dragon riders. She's just gotten Daemon back. She has this big army. If she wanted to, she could probably win this war herself, but at the cost of thousands and thousands of lives. And then she's sort of given this back door by Alicent. And so I think we leave season 2 with Rhaenyra in this place of what am I going to do?
It's such a beautiful scene and so wonderfully written by Sara, wonderfully performed by Em and Olivia, and Gita beautifully directed it. And the way it launches us into the 3rd season and the unknown of what's to come, it's a tour de force.
There's so much in play. There are armies, there are dragons, there's castle strongholds and political maneuvering, but at the end of the day, it comes down to these 2 women trying to figure it out.
The Lannisters are arriving in the Riverlands. The High Towers are marching through the Reach. The Winter Wolves are coming from the north. The Triarchy's sailing. We see the Sea Snake going back out to sea. Daemon has his army in the Riverlands. Alicent's 4th son on his dragon, the Blue Queen, is now flying in support of this massive High Tower army. We find Otto in this cell somewhere, and we don't know quite where he is or what happened to him.
Rhaena discovers a dragon, and we see a forest outside of King's Landing, and there is Aegon.
Larys and Aegon basically escaped King's Landing because shit's about to hit the fan.
It's just a reminder of things have been put in motion which they can't pull back. And similar to Daemon's vision, where you're seeing the things that are all going to come to play a part in the whole story.
While this season was very much about the fits and starts of an early medieval war, season 3 is clearly going to be about total war.
I think Team Black are in ascendancy.
A desperate Aemond is a dangerous Aemond.
I will never, ever concede.
The whole thing is just so volatile.
Baela's gonna do whatever it takes, whatever it comes down to, she's prepared to do.
She has the better hand and an inevitably positive shot at the throne.
The pendulum could swing the other way very quickly.
We shall see who the last man standing is.